Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, CBS Sports lead NWSL writer, joined today by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, NWSL analyst and play-by-play announcer. Today's episode, we've got NWSL news and notes to share with everyone. We're also going to circle back around and take a look at some standout players during the NWSL portion where the Olympics were taking place. Lots to go through. But first, I just want to remind everyone that you can find us on Twitter at Attacking Third and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to your shows. Please leave us a 5-star review. And we also want to hear from you. So please leave us a rating and leave us a question as well. We want to introduce a new segment during these midweek episodes for you all. And we want to be a little more engaging with all of the wonderful listeners who have joined us along the way. So if you leave us a 5-star review with a question, you just might hear your question answered on these episodes. It's exciting. We're excited about it. So hopefully we're going to be introducing that new segment starting as early as next week with everyone. Lisa, I'm excited about it. And there's other news happening in our CBS podcast world. Why don't you let the listeners know all about it?
Sandra, there's always more news happening, and we're welcoming a new podcast to the CBS Sports family. It's Fantasy Football Today, DFS. Get ready to dominate daily fantasy this year with optimized lineups, stacks, perceived ownership, leverage plays, and so much more. Join Frank Stamp, Mike McClure, and Sia Najad 2 times a week in the FFT DFS feed. The first episode, it dropped Tuesday, so you guys can download it and follow Fantasy Football Today DFS podcast and catch it anywhere you listen to your podcasts on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, or anywhere else you listen to FFT.
You love to see it, the family growing. It's always a delight.
It is such a delight, and I'm excited to be back here with you, Sandra. As always, excited to drop a new segment where we answer fans' questions, because we get a lot of your questions, guys, on Twitter, on the chat, but leave them to us on Apple Podcasts with a 5-star review and we'll answer them.
Yeah, I think we're really excited about it. I mean, it's going to be a work in progress, as everyone is in this world. Quite honestly, we'll see how it goes for sure. We might take a look. We might have to filter through some questions because sometimes there's some interesting ones out there. So we'll try to choose ones that are, of course, appropriate and in line with the episode that we are trying to produce for you all here. But I'm excited to get back into NWSL news and notes and all other wonderful little things. Like I said, everyone who's been listening to us, we've been talking about so much about the Olympics, and again, we're still continuing to sort of put that to bed a little bit, and we're going to be revisiting some performances in light of the Olympic portion of the schedule that took place during the NWSL schedule. But I'm excited. How are you doing today, Lisa?
I'm good. The sun is shining. It's not too humid in Philadelphia. Just some nice weather days. I got an early morning workout in. We have new faces on the Que Golazo side with some family members joining there as well. I like when my family's growing. The CBS Sports family, the Que Golazo family, and our family joining. Sandra, it's good. It's a good day. How are you today?
Again, delightful. It's just all of it. All of it's delightful today as we're linking up midweek. Can't relate on the humidity side of things. There's been some there's been some massive warnings, tornado warnings, some storm warnings coming in through Chicago. So in between all the rain, there's still this like weird, slick, thick humidity. So hopefully once it gets a good solid rain and it takes itself out
Isn't
completely.
that the worst? You think the rain is going to come and wipe out the humidity, clear it up. You'll be able to breathe when you go outside, and it doesn't. You get the rain and the humidity is still thick. It's gross.
Yep.
It's gross. Yep.
So hopefully that happens today, but not right now while we're recording, so that we don't lose, so that I don't lose any power on my end, and we can get our NWSL action on here. But first, I think to lead this whole segment off, we're actually going to start with the actual news portion of this episode. Washington Spirit dropping some midweek news for everybody, announcing that their head coach Richie Burke is stepping down from his position. President of Sporting Operations Larry Best quoted as saying, Monday, Richie advised me of some health concerns, and we mutually agreed that it was in the best interest of him and of the club for him to step down as our coach. Once Richie's health improves, he will join the Sporting Operations front office staff. So, yeah, just some interesting things to take out of that statement there. stepping down due to health concerns from the head coaching position, but also should all of that subside, if he finds himself in a better place, not returning to that head coach position, returning to a front office staff position. So stay tuned, I guess, for this one. But has been with the Spirit since 2019. Not the first time the Spirit had to go through some coaching changes before, but just interesting timing, I think, most of all with this one, Lisa.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And of course, we hope and we wish that Richie Burke is okay. No one really knows the extent of this, but the fact that they hope and plan to have him join the front office is good news, that hopefully he can still be involved and be around the players. I've had the pleasure and joy of speaking with him a number of times. Just when I do broadcasts, we get to talk with the coaches and ask him questions. And he's always such an enthusiastic guy, really loves soccer and likes to have fun. Just a good personality, really over the top in his enthusiasm for the game and for talking with us. Always loves talking with the broadcasters. But yeah, this is an interesting thing that we're seeing happening in the NWSL, especially this year, Sandra. Lots of coaches stepping out, stepping down, resigning. Lots of different reasons.
I almost feel like we're getting like some coaching related news, like every few weeks or every month this year in 2021 in regards to NWSL coaching positions. It's really kind of like, oh, okay, something in the water. Like, what's the vibe here? But I'm interested to see if the Spirit perhaps, try to go the route of Orlando Pride here, because they had a situation where ultimately Mark Skinner stepped down, but that was, he was stepping down to take another head coaching position back home for him in England with Manchester United. So some different circumstances there, but they immediately tried to put out, a call for at least a steady figure in the interim, because we're at the halfway point of the season. For all of these teams, quite frankly, all of these teams already have at minimum 12 games, behind them in the regular season, in a 24-game season. So they're all embracing and looking ahead to this second half. So they did name Chris Ward as the interim head coach, but it's going to be curious to see if there is going to be some more news around this in terms of who could possibly be tied to the steady head coaching position job for the Spirit. Because even though for Orlando Pride, they named Becky Burley as interim head coach, she's only a few weeks in, and we're already hearing a ton of great stuff from the player side of things in relation to her appointment as the interim. So we'll see how this kind of goes moving forward. If they leave this on the table, if Orlando leaves it on the table, if Spirit leave it on the table, moving into next season, you're talking about multiple teams that are going to be on the search for a head coach in this league.
That's exactly right. I think that you have to start putting out feelers now, especially when you look at a team like Washington Spirit. They're sitting number 7 right now in the standings. So they're only one position off from making a playoff spot, which when you're looking for a new head coach, it's a lot easier when you have a team that is used to winning and makes playoffs and understands the postseason. And I guess the other side of that coin is, for the Spirit, if they don't, or any of these teams, if they don't make the playoffs, they have more time to find a head coach and more time for the head coach to come in and change things up, get new players, and get settled in with their new club. But there's been so much turnover across the NWSL, and for lots of different reasons, like you mentioned. But I think interim head coaches can come in and make a difference. A lot of times they haven't had those head coaching positions at this level and at this high level in this competition. So it's a chance for them to prove themselves and show they're good. And for Chris Ward at Washington Spirit, he was with the Spirit a few years ago in 2013. He was a first assistant. So we did a lot of training sessions and technical skills and fitness plans for the team. And the last year, I think August 2020, he joined Spirit again as the tactical analysis, player performance development coach is his technical title there. But he's coached a lot and he's been in a lot of different places. So to slide into that head coaching role, I'm sure he's already done a lot of the duties. Assistant coaches really are the right-hand man to the head coach. So we'll see how it goes, because Washington plays this weekend. So about 4-day turnaround, because I believe Washington plays on Friday
It's
against
gonna be quick.
Houston. So it's a 3-day turnaround
Yeah, so
before
they
you
announced
have
it
to
on a
get there.
Wednesday. Announced it on a Wednesday. Got a game on Friday. It's huge. It's huge.
But like you mentioned, Becky Burley did it with Orlando. She got a tie her first time as the head
Yeah,
coach, or
yeah,
interim head
she
coach, and
did.
then she got a win.
No, that's true. And you know what, the Spirit, I mean, I'm sure we'll get a ton more into this when we look at the actual preview episode on Friday, but for now, um it's definitely something that's going to come into play for this team with the quick turnaround, with only the couple days of preparation in between. Um but I am curious to see if they can maybe be motivated by that, because they're on a little bit of a skid, like a teeny tiny one, after going on a really strong run during the Olympic portion of the league schedule. They've kind of dropped some results over these last couple of weeks. So I'm curious to see if this is something that's gonna be a different motivating factor for the team and try to get them kind of a
Mhm.
bounce back response from it.
And
And
there's a
we'll
lot of
see.
young players on this Spirit squad. So how they deal with this change, I think some of them could be affected just because they're new to this league and they've understood a coach for so long or all season even, and understand what the coach expects of them. And now that expectation might be changing with a new coach.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
a lot to watch for this team.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I'm very curious to see what names are potentially attached to the Spirit in terms of wanting to bring somebody on, because I mean, it wasn't that long ago, when they just appointed Richie Burke, and even then there were a lot of like ears to the ground, like trying to just hear like who was going to be attached in this interview process for people who are going to be named to the Spirit head coaching position at the time. So it's like now it's kind of like they're going to have to start this one all over again. And then even if you look at a team like OL Reign, where they did have somebody in place, somebody like Sam Lady, who's been with the club for a long, long time, really kind of get in there, be able to kind of turn things around for OL Reign. And in doing that, kind of making this switch, turning something on and like getting the team results, Oil Rain went ahead and also said, "Hey, not only is all these good results happening, like we're gonna have a head coach in place like as soon as the Olympics are over, because it's gonna be Laura Harvey. So they're gonna be reintroducing her back into the fold. So it's just it's gonna be for these teams in particular, the Reign, Spirit, Orlando Pride, these teams that are kind of jockeying for position right now, kind of mid-table, lower mid-table. It's going to be very interesting to sort of see how these things shake out in light of all of the different kind of coaching scenarios in play.
Yeah, and a great grab for Laura Harvey and OL Reign for her to slide in there, and she'll be there. Olympics are done.
Olympics are over, so that means she's eventually going to make her way to go and coach up Oil Rain. But let's take a look at it. Olympics are done. One of the things that we did, Lisa, leading up into some of all of this Olympic content that we were producing for everybody, was we wanted to take a look at players that we knew were going to be in the NWSL with an opportunity in front of them to really kind of showcase their talents and their ability on the pitch during this Olympic portion of the schedule. We even wrote about it for CBS Sports. I threw something up ahead of the Olympics. I chose 4 players to maybe kind of keep an eye on who I thought would shine in league play during the Olympic stretch. And I said, first of all, I was like, I had to limit myself to 4 players, because I mean, we could probably choose so many. And then I wanted to like limit myself to like positional areas. So I was like, oh, like let me choose a goalkeeper, let me choose a midfielder, etc., defender, striker. So I had looking back at that article, I chose Didi Herrera in net to keep an eye on, Andy Sullivan in the midfield, Kayla Sharples on the back line of things, Morgan Weaver in the striker position. So I think just looking back, I'm satisfied, really, quite frankly, with all of my selections. Just to continue to be each other's hype persons. I remember you saying that you wanted to take a look at players like on the Houston Dash and Katie Naughton. I thought that she had a pretty strong showing during this Olympic portion of the season, and you were looking at some other attackers on the Thorns side of things for sure. But I think for when I'm looking at my players in particular, I'm circling somebody like Kayla Sharples on the back line for Chicago, because we started to see this particular defender get time on the pitch with Chicago in light of maybe some injuries occurring and taking place. And over this Olympic stretch, something was solidified for Chicago on the back line. And what they did was they paired up Sharples alongside Sarah Gordon in that center back pairing. And it was very interesting talking to Sarah Gordon about that in a post game performance, where directly asked her, let's talk a little bit about this chemistry that's developed between you and Sharples. And she actually credits the chemistry between them, the fact that they're two very different type of players, two very different types of defenders, and that they balance each other out essentially, and that is why their partnership has worked so well over this particular Olympic stretch of games. And these are also two players who are kind of viewed as like dual type of defenders, where if Chicago needs them to, they'll move them out wide versus inside, the middle center back duo. So I thought it was very impressive to see her get her defensive recoveries in for Chicago. She was a big part of a lot of that chaotic energy with own goal, with the 5 force own goals happening over this Olympic stretch of games for Chicago. It's like they were targeting her on some of these set pieces, and she was just like this really big presence in the box, creating enough chaos for, one of these force own goals to kind of come into play, or somebody like Rachel Hill to be able to kind of just clean up some of the chaotic energy that Sharple provided and just slot away some of these goals. So I thought it was very impressive Olympic stretch of games that Kayla Sharples had for Chicago Red Stars for sure. And obviously, I'm going to also shine light on any Washington Spirit player that I can, because they were my dark horse in the beginning of this season. So seeing Andy Sullivan, I think you and I could both agree that this is a player that, we know that she's been starting for the Spirit. She's been a starting caliber player for this team since she got drafted a few years ago. So this is a player that we knew was likely going to see some time on the pitch, and that didn't change during this Olympic stretch. She's had a very solid season for them, quite frankly, to date, even prior to this Olympic stretch of games. But we started to see some really strong interlinking play with Sullivan and the attacking line. And even if it was moments where we saw like these really just sort of long balls over the top to somebody like a Trinity Rodman, or a very lovely build up of a goal between the two of them at one point, it was just very impressive. What were some players that stood out for you, Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of the big ones, and there were so many players that really stepped in during this Olympic stretch. Someone that I kept coming back to, that I wasn't expecting to keep watching and keep a close eye on during this stretch, was Portland goalkeeper Bella Bigsby. She stepped in throughout the last couple of weeks and has done tremendous. And Mark Parsons, head coach for the Thorns, has said time and time again, he has 3 NWSL starting caliber goalkeepers in this league. Of course, with AD Franch, Bella Bigsby, and Shelby Hogan. And the fact that only one of them gets to start on his team, he says that's a shame, because any other team, they would all be starters there. And this was a chance for Bella Bigsby to get consistent starting minutes in goal, and with a Portland Thorns team that took off during this Olympic stretch. They did not miss a beat. And it was because of players like Bella Bigsby, filling in for AD Franch, who played at the Olympics, got time and won bronze for her country. So that was really fun to watch Bigsby. She had an unbeaten record in July, 92 save percentage, which is huge for a player that doesn't get a lot of playing time traditionally, with sitting behind another goalkeeper like Franch. Another player that I want to shout out, just because Washington Spirit, I like them too, Sandra, Ashley Hatch. She came into her own during this stretch. She started scoring goals. She started having more confidence on the ball. She started being more versatile in her attacking abilities, which made it really hard for opponents to predict what she was going to do and where she was going to do it, which was fun to watch. And because she's so young, she has so much more growth to go in this league. Now with the turnover at Washington, we'll see what happens, but I don't think she'll miss a beat. She's a player that has solidified herself over the last few weeks, and understood how not to play to her opponent's weaknesses, but rather to play up her own strengths to be successful on the field. And then another player I want to give a shout out to, we talked a little bit about Houston Dash and how they had some holes to fill. And I think Katie Naughton did well on the back line. There was some time for Houston where they needed to adjust a little bit, but over the last week or so, 2 weeks, they've figured it out a little bit. And Gabby Seiler is a player that stepped into the midfield for Houston Dash that was previously playing behind players like Sophie Schmidt and Christy Mewis, and now she got time over the last few weeks, and she ended up scoring 2 goals, her first NWSL career goal, and then she tacked on another one just a week or 2 later. She was a player that was more defensive minded when she came into this Houston Dash squad, and her role for this team was going to be to break up opponents' play and sit in that 6 role, and she saw that there was gaps that needed to be filled in the attacking end, and she did just that. She understood where she could make Houston better over the last few weeks, and I think she did that. So that'll be interesting to see moving forward when all of these Olympic players return. They're at the international level for a reason, so they'll get time, of course, but the trainings are going to be much more intense now because players like Morgan Weaver, Bella Bigsby, Gabby Seiler are now fighting for those starting positions that they've had over the last few weeks, and understanding that the rhythm of play is so important and being consistent in training and on the field is so important. So I'm so excited to have all the Olympic players back in the league playing and competing, but I think that the competition will be increased, not because these Olympic players are returning and their skill level, but because of the competition off the field and in training amongst these teams, and players fighting for spots and fighting for time to be the first sub off the bench.
It's created some real good problems for a lot of the coaching staffs across the league. But Lisa, this is attacking third. We got to talk about some of these attacking players real quick before we close out on this episode. We're talking Sydney Leroux being such a focal point for Orlando Pride. We're talking about Bethany Balser just really returning to that 2019 Rookie of the Year form that we saw out of her during that regular season. Sophia Smith, Simone Charlie, multiple players, quite frankly, for Portland Thorns, the depth of that squad. We've been talking about them a lot over these last several weeks, kind of carrying the torch really in first place for the Portland Thorns side. But so many good goals that we've been seeing from all these attackers. Mel Pugh making statements of her own. She was tired of the own goals. She said, no, my turn, and showing everybody what she's about. So it's been a delight to see. And even on the rookie side of things, Trinity Rodman not kind of giving up and staying so active in the final third for the Spirit during this time. It's these moments in these international windows during the league, whether it's in a cycle of a World Cup or cycle of the Olympics or during a FIFA, friendly that might not be during a FIFA window. We'll just say, it's always a real treat to be able to take a closer look at the depths of all of these squads because there are so many talented players along all of these rosters, and it's really in these moments where they get opportunities and minutes to shine through. So it's been awesome covering the league over the last several weeks for sure.
Heck yeah, it has. I love that we're highlighting the attacking players, and just because I'm defensive minded, but also because she is an attacking player leading the league in assists. Caprice Didasco for Gotham. She's so good getting up the flank, and she didn't miss a beat during this Olympic stretch. She did really well, but yeah, there are so many players to keep an eye on. I love that you highlighted Mal Pugh. She was also on my list of players that came into her own and took this window of opportunity to get on the board and get into the attack and choose to get better over this time.
Delightful. Lisa, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to come back and join all of our listeners with more NWSL action, of course. We have a Friday preview that will be available for everyone soon. Again, there's going to be a ton of games this weekend. I love NWSL weekend. Games are going to start Friday all the way through to Sunday. So make sure you check out that episode bright and early because it will be available. I want to thank everybody for listening, as always. A quick reminder to follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your shows. We're also available as video, so please subscribe to us on YouTube. Just visit youtube.com/attacking third. Once again, we'll be back Friday with an NWSL preview. I just want to remind you to leave us a 5-star review with a question, and we'll be back with these midweek segments to answer it. So go ahead and do us that favor and drop us a line. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.